Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again. Today we're doing our wrap-up video for the month of March, and it's been a pretty interesting month. I kind of feel like I had a shit ton of time and also no time at all this month, and it's been kind of odd. I've just had a lot of work to do for school, more so than I expected, to be honest with you. And with having spring break as well, it all just kind of felt really odd, but it's been a good month. I didn't really manage to do all of the stuff that I said I was going to read. Like, I didn't really follow my TBR, but I did read a lot. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But before that, I did want to talk about the watch list, what I've been watching this month, and it hasn't been too much, honestly. It's been, you know, a little bit of Delicious in Dungeon just because I've been rewatching it. But I basically watched a few episodes of that earlier in the month and then forgot about it. I also ended up watching Severance Season 2. And to be honest with you, after the last episode, I don't think I care about Severance. I find that it's a very interesting premise, and I think that some of it is really cool, and the concepts in it are very valuable, I guess, to like a capitalist society, in the sense of like, yeah, this is what we should not do, right? Kind of the same way that Jurassic Park tells us that we shouldn't mess with ancient animals, and Terminator tells us we shouldn't mess with AI. Severance is really telling us that we shouldn't mess with the human brain, and we should not try to create these kind of like weird, it's almost like the concept of post-scarcity, but only when it relates to how companies can take advantage of it, and I think that that's pretty bad. So Severance functions as a pretty interesting kind of view at stuff that we should not do going forward in the future. But as a story, I think it kind of fails a bit, actually. At the end of the second season, we learn nothing. I feel like the story is the same as it was, you know, at the end of episode 3 of the first season. I don't know why Mark and crew are working on anything. I don't know what Cold Harbor means. I don't know why Lumen is the way it is, and it doesn't matter, and it doesn't work for me because the characters are not trying to figure out what's going on. The characters are existing as separate from the world building, right? It almost feels like only, you know, a small portion of the world building ever matters to them, and it's kind of weird because kind of the main thrust of the story is this mystery. But if the characters are not interested in solving the mystery, then why is it a mystery in the first place, right? It feels kind of odd. I don't really understand the point of it. Maybe it's some different sort of plot line or trope or cliche that I've not really experienced much. I'm not really sure, but it's not one that I like. I don't really enjoy it. I feel that stories should, they don't really have to be linear or anything like that, but if it's entertainment, I feel like it should be entertaining. And most of the time with Severance, I find myself kind of frustrated at the lack of knowledge or the lack of answers that are provided by the story. And if I don't understand what the story is trying to tell me, I don't really care. And I think that season 2 of Severance really failed. I'd be willing to watch season 3, but I don't really necessarily think that I will if I'm on my own, right? So we'll see. Maybe if I have a friend that wants to watch it with me, I might do that. But as of right now, I don't think I will. So I've been watching this with my roommate, right? And he's moving away back to his hometown in order to go do a job there. And so I'll stay here in Dallas. And I don't know anyone else that likes Severance, so I won't really have an impetus or a need to watch it, right? And so I probably won't, which means that the series completely failed to capture my attention. So that's pretty bad. Moving on from that to Reacher, though. Season 3 of Reacher was kind of poor compared to the first two, and I think this is probably due to the writer's strike that happened a few years ago. I feel like this is directly related to that, right? Because the story lacks cohesion, right? It's not necessarily bad by any means. Like, it's still enjoyable and understandable, and you know why Reacher is the way he is, or what he's doing, or why he wants to do revenge on Xavier Quinn, right? But a lot of the points in the middle don't really make too much sense, and the characters introduced are not really well written, and there's work done to kind of create this tension of like, you know, the FBI lady wanting to save her CI, Teresa or whatever, the kind of necessary social and character development necessary for Reacher to care about this Teresa character never happens. And when it doesn't happen for Reacher, it doesn't happen for us. And so when I was watching this, I was constantly, you know, wondering, why do I care about Teresa? This FBI lady is not a good character. She's not interesting or enjoyable. Her accent is atrocious, and it's not very good. I think she's supposed to have a Boston accent, but the lady that plays her doesn't do a good job at that. And she also ends up being immensely stupid as a manager, or as a leader, or whatever you want to call it. She basically gets everyone around her killed, and basically for no reason. Like, all of the people that die around her, that she kind of basically sends to their death, you know, advertently or inadvertently, all die for nothing. And so she becomes this kind of like nuisance character, more so than she is like the kind of like female counter to Reacher, right, that he usually has in other seasons. So she ends up being superfluous and not useful. I feel like this could have been an easier, smaller story where she just ends up being a point of contact for Reacher and doesn't really try to get involved in the kind of in the broader story of the season, right? So there was a bit of failure here as well, and I guess since I gave Reacher a pass, I should give season 2 of Severance a bit of a pass as well. But I feel like Severance was just significantly worse, because I kind of still see the normal Reacher that we see. With Severance, I just don't care at all. Like, the world building, which is the stuff that interests me, is never going to be answered, or at least it seems like it's never going to be answered. And so there's no point in keeping up with it, because it's not going to tell me what I want, right? So I lost interest in Severance, but Reacher's still fine. It's not good, but I'm sure that going forward, it'll be better, right? So hopefully that is the case. Other than that, I did end up watching some Game of Thrones when I went to visit my parents. That's what they were watching currently, and so I just tagged along and kept watching some episodes with them. It was pretty fun. We were watching it in Spanish. The translation was good. Not much to say about that I haven't said before. Game of Thrones is a good series, up to about halfway through season 6 maybe, and then the ending is quite bad. But overall, pretty good stuff, right? So yeah, finally, the last stuff that I've been watching here is Hobbit. I watched all 3 of the Hobbit movies. We watched the second and third one, extended editions. And it's been pretty fun. I really enjoy the Hobbit movies. I know that in terms of, like, compared to the book, they're not that good, but I've never read the book, you know, fully, right? I've read about halfway through it. I think that the last major thing that I remember from the book is them meeting Bjorn, the bear guy, right? And so most of the second half of the book, which is most of the story that is portrayed in the movies, is really not something that I care about too much. I have no real attachment to Lord of the Rings. I do enjoy the Hobbit movies, though. And they're a little bit ridiculous sometimes, actually. I think it's fun. There's a certain whimsy to the Hobbit movies that it's kind of weird, based on the fact that they're trying to be these very serious, epic fantasy type stories, right? But at the same time, it's really enjoyable. And me and my roommate get a kick out of every time that they zoom in on Thorin, and he does this kind of like Fabio walk across the screen, and it's really funny because it's like so serious that he like is aura forming, but it does looks ridiculous because he's like a 3-foot tall man, and I think it's really fun. But the Hobbit movies are great. I really enjoy them. We're gonna finish through them. Well, actually, we did finish through them, and we're gonna move on to the Lord of the Rings movies at this point. So that'll be pretty exciting. But we'll see, because I've never actually watched the Lord of the Rings movies properly. I know about them to some extent, right? I've seen clips of them multiple times, but I've never sat down and watched all of them completely. So that'll be pretty exciting and cool. So we'll see how that goes. But that's it for the watch list here. Let's move on to the reading list. So let's start with books here, because I ended up reading quite a lot of them. So I started maybe 2 weeks ago or something. I went to visit my parents, and my dad had been talking about this author that we like, Evan Curry. And he'd been reading through this series called the Odyssey 1 prequel series, I think, Archangel 1 or something like that. And he had been discussing it with me, telling me some of the moments that happened in the story that he thought were funny or interesting or cool, right? And so that gave me the itch to go back and read through all of the Odyssey 1 books again, because it's something that I haven't done in a while. I think I did start doing it last year, in like October or November, but I never finished through it. So this time I just started off where I left off, in the middle of book 2 somewhere, and I kept going. The thing is that Evan Curry does a great job at making very easy to read, but also deeply enjoyable stories, specifically in his Odyssey 1 series, which is basically the story of the Earth's first FTL capable ship, right? So it's this ship called the Odyssey 1. It's captained by this guy called Eric Weston, who was basically a fighter pilot. He was kind of the leader of this special irregular squadron called the Archangels, who had neural capacities tied into their ships or to their fighters, and so they had like abilities beyond the normal story, right, or beyond the normal limits of real life, right? So these guys were like Top Gun Maverick, but even further beyond, right? And so he becomes a captain of the ship, mostly to get him and the Archangel out of the world, so that they don't kind of end up languishing in post-war, anti-war sentiment, right? And so he gets sent off, and as he kind of does his maiden voyage, he finds a emergency transmission. And when he figures it out, he goes to investigate it, and he finds a young woman, very kind of similar to something like Alien, I guess. I feel like there's kind of a scene in Alien that looks pretty similar to what the is described in Odyssey 1 by Evan Curry. And what happens from there is that humans find another spacefaring human-looking race, and these people call themselves the Primine, or the colonists, right? And so humans from Earth go and interact with these humans not from Earth, and they realize that these humans not from Earth are being attacked by this basically hive mind monster kind of group called the Drazen, right? And so the Drazen give no quarter. They do not care. They just want to destroy life, right? They're kind of this like flood kind of type thing from Halo. And so Eric Weston ends up putting his ship in between himself, or in between the Drazen and the Primine, right? And so he ends up becoming embroiled in this intergalactic war, or interstellar war, I think is probably the better term there, because it's not across galaxies, it's only across stars. And he ends up incurring the wrath of the Drazen. Eventually this leads them back to Earth, and then it turns out that the Drazen are being controlled by someone else, who also happens to be another Earth-looking race, human-looking race. Although they're tied to the Primine, they're not tied to humans from Earth. There is this issue going on between all three of them, and then this expands on to a bigger kind of problem, right? And so you kind of have 2 or 3 different series going on here. So there's Odyssey 1. This is the main series. There's 8 books in that series. And then after book 4, there is a spin-off called The King of Thieves, which is a single book. And then after book 7, there are another spin-off. This is a 3-book spin-off called The Archangels. And this one is based on kind of some of the crew that we meet earlier on in Odyssey 1 becoming pirates, working in the Empire as a way to get more information out of them, right? And then it all ties back into the 8th book that finishes off the story. And actually, it doesn't finish off the story. It finishes off the 2nd arc in the story, where the 3rd one starts with book 9 called The Seeds That Were Sown, right? So it's really interesting. This is a very multi-dimensional kind of setup. It's not very linear, but if you follow the publication date of anything related to Odyssey 1, you will basically be able to read through all of it very clearly, very easily. You can ignore the prequel stories, which are called Holy Ground and Infamy. These stories tell you the origin story for Eric Weston and Steph, who is the second leader of the Archangels after Eric Weston, right? And they're not really important to the main Odyssey 1 story, but they are fun to read if you're interested. Although they mostly read as like a normal kind of World War II-esque kind of military fiction story. There is kind of like slight sci-fi elements to them, but it's pretty minimal, right? It basically retells the story of like World War III in this alternate timeline that Evan Curry writes for us, and it's not deeply important to the Odyssey 1 story, right? But I did actually end up reading through them. So I read 1 through 8 of the main Odyssey 1 series. I read the 2 prequels, so that's 10 books. And then I read King of Thieves, which is 11. And then the 3 Archangel books, so that's 14 books total. And I have not read The Seeds That Were Sown. I have not read that book at all, right? And actually, I finished the last book in the series this morning. So I really love this series. I'm gonna do a series of book chatter type reviews where I don't really give you a full accounting of each book. I'll just kind of give you the general premise of each of the arcs, and hopefully that's good enough. I just don't really want to have to do 14 different videos because I don't have that kind of time scale anymore. I used to, last year I had a lot of time, but in this case I have a lot less because it's crunch time here with school ending here soon, so I have to give myself more time, right, for that, and I can't dedicate that to the YouTube channel. So I'll just do kind of arc reviews for Odyssey 1, and hopefully it's kind of clear from there. But I recommend the series a lot. It's really, really awesome. It's really enjoyable. It's clearly written by a single person with no help or very little help, and so the further on you go into the series, the closer it is to modern kind of date, the more that you notice that there's issues with it, because it seems like Evan Curry has been trying to pump them out faster than he used to, or there's been less time to fix some of the issues, right? And so the further you go, into the future, or the closer you get to current time, the less time has been spent editing these books. And so sometimes there are some kind of clear, glaring issues that are just basically editing problems, right? It's nothing that affects the way that the story is written or deeply affects the plot line or anything like that, but it does reduce your enjoyment quite a bit when you start noticing that many issues going forward, right? And it's mostly because I read through all of them in like the span of 2 weeks, so I basically read one book a day for multiple days. Well, not really, less than that, but and so I notice, earlier the books don't have that many issues because they've just had like nearly 10 years of time. And then the closer you get to now, the more issues start popping up, which is kind of funny because you would expect with technology there'd be less. But I think the problem is that in the scale of book writing, a lot of those issues can kind of pass you by because there's more important things to focus on than line editing, right? Especially if you're a single indie author that doesn't have any support, right? So I get where that's happening and why. It just kind of feels a little bit disheartening when you just see so many issues happen over and over again, right? But it's not that big of a deal. The first 4 books themselves are for sure perfect. Going forward, your mileage may vary there, depending on your ability to look past some of those issues, right? So either way, I really recommend the series. It's great, and Evan Curry has a lot of good books. So otherwise, I also read Advent by Seth Ring, and I think that's it for the novels. So I read 15 novels this month, which is kind of crazy. The thing is that most of them are books that I already knew quite intimately, right? I've read most of Odyssey 1 a lot of times at this point. I think the first book I've read about 12 times. The following books I've read a lot less, but still more than 5 times for most of them. And so it was pretty easy to get through them. And I did actually end up skipping through the first one and most of the second one. So I really only read about 13 books this month, but still quite a lot. But it's not that difficult when they're pretty easy to read short kind of books, right? So that's it for the books. In terms of comic books, I read quite a few, most of them single issues, although I did read one collected edition, and I guess I'll start with that. So I did read Ultraman, The Trials of Ultraman. This is book 2 in the Ultraman stuff that Marvel has published. The third one is the Mysteries of Ultra 7, and I will be reading that here in April. But this one was pretty fun. It's pretty enjoyable. There's nothing too much going on here. I think that the first book is a bit better, but that's just because the first one has a lot of leeway because it's the introduction to Ultraman. This one feels like it didn't really do as much as it could have done, although at the same time there's only 5 issues, right? So you can't really do too much in 5 issues, but I feel that it missed the mark a little bit because it didn't really focus on fighting kaiju. It focused on the social kind of tension that was caused by the creation of Ultraman. And I guess that's kind of modern superhero storytelling, but it feels a bit wasteful in my opinion, because who cares? We should know about the aliens that the Ultraman is fighting, right? I don't really care that much about the other stuff. Okay, and let's keep going with the single issues here. So, first of all, we have a Marvel must-haves. This is kind of a free thing that they give out every once in a while, and this one is not very good. There's nothing of value here for me personally. So, it has Captain America Out of Time, Part 1. This is by Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting. It has Phoenix, Book 1. This is From the Ashes, right? And it has Spider-Man Reign 2. And I did not care for any of these. I think that the Phoenix one was the best one, just because it has the artwork that I find the least objectionable. But Marvel just doesn't work for me a lot of times. I think that sometimes their choices for artists just don't really work for me. And I just don't care about Captain America as a character. Like, in the movies, I like him. But in the comic books, I don't give a shit. Like, okay, he's just a soldier. That's cool. Not really that special. At this point, there's cooler super soldier characters, right? Like, you know, Master Chief or something like that. So, I don't really care too much. And I don't like the Spider-Man Reign thing just because the artwork is so weird. And the story doesn't really make sense to me at all. So, I don't know. I didn't really like it. But, you know, it's always nice to have a free book. So, there we go. That was all, you know, I really had to say about that one. So, moving on to the single issues here. So, we have Heatseeker number 3. This is the penultimate book, and I also ended up reading the last one as well. So overall, this is a pretty good story. It's pretty enjoyable. It does get a little bit sci-fi, more so than before, and I think that's just due to the nature of like modern spy thriller type stories. They get more and more sci-fi the further you go, right? Look at Mission Impossible. He's fighting like Skynet in the last one, and that's kind of crazy, right? But there's really no problems with that. I did have a bit of an issue with the artwork here. I think Ace Continuado's artwork is interesting, but some of the work with the coloring is just not up to par. And I think that there is a distinct quality drop in the latest issues of the gun hunting stuff compared to the earlier stuff, and maybe that's because there's more pressure to succeed, and that actually, you know, kind of makes it harder to do so. But maybe there's also kind of issues with the artist just being overworked in some way, which kind of feels weird because I'm pretty sure most of these artists only work on these series, and there seems to be a pretty long, you know, lead up time. So maybe, I don't know. There's issues there that I'm not aware of, but overall, I feel like gun hunting is a pretty interesting concept. I actually quite like the idea, and most of the time the execution is pretty good, but sometimes it just doesn't really work out that well. And I think that Titan, specifically you know, Charles Harday and the people that work on this, maybe should think about trying to implement some of the concepts or the ideas under which Japanese comic book creators work under, right? Like, not because I want the stories to come out faster, I don't think that's the issue, but rather having a team of artists with one main guy that does the figure work, right? And then kind of having people in the background work on the backgrounds and all of this other stuff, right? It might, I don't know if it'll be more expensive, I'm sure it will be, but it might actually end up with a better product overall, right? And the way that comic books are moving forward now, it might be time to switch over to, you know, trade specifically, and kind of remove yourself from the nebulous kind of market that is the comic books, you know, floppy, right? But I don't know. It's kind of interesting there. I don't really know too much about the industry or how it works on the inside, right? So, you know, I could be talking out of my ass here, but I don't know. So here we have Justice League Unlimited 4. This is a great story. I was supposed to pick up number 5 this week as well, or this month as well, but I just didn't end up doing that. I had to pick, because I had a limited amount of money this month, and I picked other things before this, right? So yeah, then we have Herculoids number 1. This is pretty good. It's not amazing, but I do enjoy the art style here, and I think that the concept is good, so I'm looking forward to reading more of this. However, I'm pretty willing to drop this at any point, so we'll see how long it lasts. Then you have Thundercats number 13. This was a bit of a waste of an issue. It didn't really deserve the $5 price tag. However, I guess they can't just like randomly drop the price on certain issues. But mostly the issue was that, or the problem with the issue was that there was a distinct lack of content. It was just Snarf kind of going through these doors, right? And kind of meeting with other Snarf creatures and then going off to meet with Apex. And that's cool, but it was a waste of 20 pages. And maybe not a waste, actually. It was pretty enjoyable to look at. But if I'm paying you $5 a month, you got to make sure that every month those $5 are worth it. And in this case, to me, that was not the case. I don't like. There's more interesting or more important things to focus on right now than Snarf kind of going on his own adventure. Like, where's Lionel? What is he doing? And maybe this works as setup, but it distinctly feels like I wasted my money, and that is not good. So this is one of those issues that maybe you can skip. If you haven't picked it up yet and you're kind of thinking about it, you're not really missing much. So there you go. Here's Absolute Superman number 5. This is awesome. I really enjoy this story a lot. I think Rafa Sandoval is doing amazing. I think he's going to get off here in issue 6, and he's going to move on to something else. I hope not, because I actually quite like his artwork, except for his faces. But I'm curious to see what's going to happen here. I know the next issue comes out in a day or two, actually, so I'm excited about that. We'll see how that goes. We have Aquaman number 3. This is pretty good. I actually really enjoy this. I think Jeremy Adams does a great job. And I like the artist here, something Timms. He does a really awesome job with this as well. We have Flash Gordon number 7. This was a okay story. It wasn't wasteful per se, but it was definitely kind of a transitionary story, mostly just to finally give us some information about some of this stuff, right? And it was enjoyable, but it wasn't my favorite. Although it was nice to learn about Flash Gordon's past and how he becomes Flash Gordon, the spacefaring cool guy, right? He started out playing football for a college, so that makes sense, right? We have The Moon is Following Us number 7. This is awesome. I love this story here. I think it's really cool. At this point, we kind of deal with that main bad guy character. Turns out it wasn't who we thought it was. It's actually kind of a manifestation of all of the issues that this family has. And so going through and trying to save their daughter from her own dreams is also kind of serving as some sort of therapy, apparently. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. And the ending here is pretty dark, actually. It feels like there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable stuff going on in the next issue. And I'm curious to see what that will be. So overall, pretty good stuff. I quite liked it. So yeah, here we have Rogue Sun, number 25. This is pretty good. It's the start of a new arc. And we have a new Rogue Sun kind of entering here into the fray. And we're going to see how this goes. I'm not sure that there should be more than one Rogue Sun. I don't know how she manages to get her powers, but it's cool, I guess. I'm looking forward to it. Although, at this point, I feel that the main kind of thrust of the story, which is, Marcus being a shitty dad to Dylan, is kind of getting a bit boring, I guess you could say. It's been 25 issues. There has been no progress in their relationship. They're constantly fighting with each other all the time. And although it's not bad, because that is an interesting kind of motivating factor, right? The voice in your head is someone that you kind of despise because they left you. It also kind of feels redundant, like they're going in circles now. And so I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I think that there has to be some movement there. I just don't know when they'll get around to it, right? So yeah, and then we have Transformers number 18. Awesome stuff. Transformers is amazing. I'm kind of sad every month that we're getting closer and closer to the end of Dana Warren Johnson's run on Transformers. Hopefully he comes back at some point, but I don't know if I'll continue to read Transformers after he leaves. So we'll see what happens when that does happen, but I don't know. We'll see. Witchblade number 9. It's chugging along pretty well. This was a bit of an issue that I have problems with because I realized that some of the work that was being done here is good character work. It's meaningful to changing the motivations of Sarah, but it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere in a bit of a in a sense, because she kind of just sits there and then randomly realizes, oh shit, the people that I thought were bad are not bad. And that's fine, I guess, but it also feels too quick. Like, it feels like it should have been something that she thought about for a couple of issues, right? Or was set up a couple of issues in the past. And it doesn't really feel like that. Maybe if you read through the whole thing in one go, it might feel differently. But for now, just reading issue 9, it really does feel like there's some problems with some of the character development being done here because it just feels too fast, right? We have Bug Wars number 2. This is great. I really love this. I really enjoy the characters that we're introduced to. I think they'll be fun. I still don't know too much about the characters. Like, I don't really understand them yet, but I'm really enjoying my time with this story, right? It's like if Bug's life became Conan the Barbarian, and also kind of maybe like something like Vikings, or, you know, kind of, what is it called? there's a series on Netflix that follows kind of this group of Teutons, right, Germanic people, as they fight off the invading kind of Roman forces. It kind of feels like that. I can't remember the name of it, I'm sorry, but it's pretty good, and I recommend you guys watch that on Netflix. But Bug Wars kind of feels like that, right? And it's been pretty fun. I really enjoy the world building and the concepts that are being presented. I just feel like we need to develop a little bit more of the main characters, so we'll see how that happens. Conan number 19, amazing work here. Doug Braithwaite is back, and this story was pretty awesome. It's mostly just Conan going through a jungle and then eventually fighting a panther and maybe a panther man, actually, at the end of it. So that's pretty cool. Here's Heatseeker number 4, and I'm just say here that I haven't said already, so I'll move on from that quite quickly. But pretty good ending to the story. A new Heatseeker story is coming out in May, assuming that we don't have any problems going forward with the distribution of comic books, but it should be pretty cool. And then we have Satana number 2. This is great. I really enjoy this. I don't know too much about the magic side of DC, so this has been a really interesting look through it. And mostly I'm just happy to be here because of the artwork. Jamal Campbell's work is phenomenal, fantastic stuff. It just looks so gorgeous, and Zatanna is awesome. So very happy about that. We have Godzilla versus Fantastic Four. This has been pretty fun. I didn't really like the artwork that much. I think I don't have the nostalgia for Romita Jr. that most people have, right? And honestly, I don't have nostalgia for Romita Sr. either. But I know that he's a very respected person in the comic book industry that recently passed away. So I'm not gonna say anything about him or his son, Romita Jr. But I don't necessarily like the way that he draws faces, especially on male characters. And it kind of killed some of the enjoyment I had for Godzilla in this kind of Godzilla versus, Marvel kind of deal that they're going on with. So, it could have been better to pick someone else, but they're also kind of catering to the older Marvel fans with this, because Godzilla was like one of the old kind of series that were pretty big, or that were kind of meaningful in some way back in the day. So that's I get the point of it. I just feel like maybe they should have catered to the modern audiences instead, with really awesome modern style artwork, like maybe Ivan Coelho would have been really good, or literally anyone else. So yeah, but those are just my thoughts. I don't know. Here we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Naruto number 3. This is the penultimate issue apparently, which is pretty disappointing. I'm actually kind of upset about that. I think that this should have been a 6-issue miniseries, but what do I know? This was pretty fun, although it kind of tried to strike a balance between developing the characters and their friendship through getting them to get to their pizza, but also kind of expanding the lore a little bit and kind of setting up for the last major battle. And it feels like it did both well, but it didn't do both great. And that sucks, and mostly it's because there should have been more issues to this, but, it's too late to change that, so it is what it is. Hopefully we get a second series later on. Maybe we could do one with Rock Lee showing up at some point. That'd be fun. And then after that, maybe we could do one in the Shippuden timeline, and then maybe one in Boruto timeline with Naruto being an adult, right? I think that'd be pretty cool, but we'll see what happens there. And then finally, we have Wonder Woman 19. This is a pretty good issue, but I did feel kind of put out by the fact that this is the end of the Sovereign's arc, because I feel like there hasn't been anything happening to the Sovereign to kind of make it the end of the arc. I mean, he drops some sort of information about one of the characters that was kind of removed early on from the board, and when he does release this, it feels like the storyline continues. So I don't know what exactly is going on here. I also think that 19 issues for a single villain maybe was a bit much, especially because this villain isn't really a villain. He's just a talker that controls other villains, right? And so, if this is the end of the arc, then maybe it's less satisfying than I thought it would be. However, it's not bad because I did enjoy every single arc individually, every single issue individually. And so every week I felt I got my money's worth, but then overall the storytelling of the whole arc maybe isn't as high, which, it's a fair trade, I think, most of the time, because even though it is better to have your stories be cohesive when you're reading them sequentially overall, there is a higher necessity to make sure that your individual issues that come out every month that people are paying a shit ton of money for are valuable to the reader at that time, right? And maybe over long term, it doesn't really matter as much, because you need to secure that first moment of value, right? That proposition of value is only as high as those $5 in the first kind of week that it releases, and then after that it kind of loses value a lot. So you want to make sure that it's worth the $5 at that point, and then you can kind of let it go overall and kind of make it be okay that it's worth less, over time, right? So I don't know. Those are just my thoughts there. That's basically it for the comic books. Let's move on to the manga here. I didn't really read too much of it. I read 4 volumes of Slam Dunk, actually nearly 5 of them, but I've not finished with the 5th, so I'm not going to show it to you here. But this is awesome stuff. I initially had a bit of a problem with Slam Dunk. I felt like it was valuable because obviously there's something to this story if so many people love it, but the beginning of it feels very stupid because it feels like a rom-com, and then the character starts trying to figure out how to play basketball, and then it does eventually become an awesome basketball story as soon as they get through kind of the initial stuff, right? And once they start doing the battle or the game against Ryonan or whatever their name is, it really gets awesome. Like the way that Takehiko Inoue draws and actually tells you the story of the basketball game is amazing. It's so good. It's very it really connects with you, even if you're not necessarily a fan of basketball, which I'm not. I actually don't like basketball much. I mean, I played it before, I had a lot of fun playing it, but I just don't really care about watching it, even though I know that I live in Dallas and the Mavericks are, as far as I understand, a pretty good team. I should probably watch them at some point. I just don't really care. I'd rather watch baseball or soccer. And so, maybe I thought initially that some of the issues I had with Slam Dunk were because it was basketball, but no, it's just that the story kind of feels different from your average, sports manga. But once it gets going, it's going, and it's awesome. It's really, really enjoyable. I really, really recommend it. And I actually really love these editions from Panini Manga Mexico. Lately we've been seeing a lot of interesting kind of hardcover editions and special editions and all sorts of stuff coming out in the market. And I feel like maybe that's what Viz should be doing, developing a oversized Slam Dunk edition that competes with, some of the other stuff, especially because the Vagabond book seems to have sold really well. If they start doing all of Takehiko Inoue's work in those editions, starting with Slam Dunk, it'd be really awesome, especially because they could make the texture of the leather-bound edition be like a basketball, and I think that'd be really awesome. It's pretty unlikely that Viz will do this. They're not necessarily people that care too much about their customers, so I doubt that they will, but it would be really nice if they did. And I wouldn't double dip because I actually really like these Mexican editions a lot, but it would be really cool for all of those people that don't have access to modern printings of it, right? But yeah, Slam Dunk, amazing stuff. Really, really recommend it. And then the other book I read this month was Blue Lock 17. This was awesome. I really, really enjoy Blue Lock a lot. And this story was great. Rin Itoshi goes crazy because his brother sucks, and because Isagi is getting better than him. And man, it's great stuff. And this is nearly the end of the U20 arc, and then after this is the Neo Eagleless League, and that seems to be some of the best stuff in Blue Lock. So I'm very excited about that. But overall, I had a great time reading this month. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you guys did too. So let me know what you read this month down below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys later.